minutes and transmitted online later. If you're not happy with that, please let us know now. Right, welcome to you all here. I hope you had a Merry Christmas, a good Christmas. This is the first meeting of the new year. Welcome. And when apologies for absence. No? The only one is Councillor Gethin Glyn Williams. The others may turn up later. Declarations of interest. Mr. Chairman, on 4.2. Nobody else, as I can see. On to the minutes. Does anyone propose them as a true record? Proposed by Phil, seconded by Sarah. Thank you. Anything arising from the minutes? Jonathan? If I may, just a quick update on an application in Penmachno. Richard has achieved some progress here with Conwy Highways, and it's looking quite promising now that there will be a solution and it can be allowed with a planning condition. Richard, did you want to explain anything on that?
Yeah, I've been in discussion with the Highways Authority and suggested a suitable condition which will allow visibility displays to be reduced in length, provided that a wall is reduced on one side and an agreement with landowner on the other side to reduce or keep vegetation down to a suitable level. Unfortunately, I haven't had final agreement from the Highways Authority yet, but it's looking promising. I did get an email from the Highways engineer towards the end of last week that they will respond. They weren't specific on timescale, but they did say they would respond very soon. If that is the case, then we will be able to proceed with the delegated, or you've provided officers with delegated powers to approve, provided that the Highways Authority are happy with the outcome. So it's looking promising, and it'll be hopefully a good scheme once approved.
Iawn, diolch yn fawr, Richard. Diolch, Jonathan.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Jonathan. Does anyone wish to raise anything else from the minutes? If not, please indicate if you are in agreement. Green if in agreement, red if not in agreement. Right, that has carried, hasn't it, Ewan? Yes, it has carried. Moving on to applications. The Pen-y-Pass parking area, Nant Gwynant. Who's dealing with this?
That's me, Cadeirydd. This is an application. Sorry, let me share. It's an application at the Pen-y-Pass car park, National Park owned car park. Is for the installation of some barriers to control the vehicles entering and leaving the site, and the installation of ANPR cameras, which is automatic number plate recognition. Now, I'm sure you all know the car park at Pen-y-Pass. I'll just run through some photos. The proposal is to install a pair of barriers between what is the car park attendants' little shack here and these bollards here across there, which will help and assist with the pre-booking system that is now in place at Penapass. The number plate recognition will recognize the vehicle that has paid its pre-booking fee for the parking and automatically raise the barrier to allow the vehicle in. The barriers, it's not one barrier across, it is, we've agreed on 2 barriers, so there'll be no more than 3 meters in height. There'll be a central island in this sort of area, and then 1 barrier going that way to let cars in, and a barrier that way to let cars to leave. The Sherpa bus will still be able to enter and leave. I'll just run through. So looking back, again, there's the island here. There'll be an island in the middle there, and then 2 barriers going across here. There was initial concern by the Highways Authority that if people hadn't pre-booked, then they'd be queuing up and not realise that it was pre-booking and it would back up onto the highways. But following discussion with the Highways Authority, a suitable signage scheme was agreed, which shows a sign at down at the Penagurid, and 2 further signs to prevent people who haven't pre-booked from entering the car parking area. They've agreed that and withdrawn their objection. It's all part of the grander scheme around a WIDVA for the control of parking and traffic around to assist in road safety and obviously on-street parking. There will be other signage down at Nant Peris to show that it is pre-booking, but this is what I've shown on the screen is just that around the Penapass area. We've policies, it fits in with the general policies for the national park, and the conclusion is that it will assist in the problem of highway parking in and around the WIDVA, and the barriers have been designed so that they are the minimum requirements. And one thing I did want to ensure is that they don't have any lights on, so we don't have lights at 3 meters in height, but that doesn't prevent any sort of reflective strips being put on it for safety. So really, it's all part of the grander scheme for parking in and around a WIDVA, and recommendation is to approve, subject to standard conditions, but make sure that the signage is up before the barriers come into operation and no independent lighting. And recommendation is to approve.
Iawn, diolch yn fawr, Richard.
Great, thank you, Richard.
Hang on.
Dyna ni, iawn.
Right. Does anybody wish to propose anything? Tracy? Just one question for Richard in English.
All the time. The question is, if you have prepaid
In English.
Sorry, it's very quiet, JC. I can't quite hear that. Let me just try and.
Yes, my question is, Richard, will these barriers be manned all the time? Because if you have prepaid and it doesn't recognise your number plate, what happens then?
It's going to be a seasonal barrier, so it's. I mean, if it doesn't recognise your number plates, it won't. The barrier won't come up. So they'll have to turn around in the bus area and go and park down on the in the spaces at Penagurid or Nant Peris.
Even if they've paid?
No, if they've paid, well, I mean, if there is a fault, I don't think I can answer that for you.
Os gadw dim iawn ar hyn.
If I could come in on this.
Yep.
It's not part of the planning application as such, but I can confirm that it is intended to staff the site 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. and there will be a helpline between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. Right, thank you for that, Edgar. I propose that we go with the recommendation, Mr. Chairman. Brian?
Thank you, Chairman. I have a
Beginning.
related question to the one of Tracy. I support the application, but I just had some concern also about the whether they know anything about the vulnerability of that equipment to the sort of extreme weather that we get up there, and whether it would be robust enough for that situation. In terms of its location and planning issues, I don't have a problem. But the operational stuff does give me a little bit of concern.
Ateb y cwestiwn yna hefyd.
I can respond to that, in that there will be an agreement with the company, the contract. If it breaks down, they'll come out and repair it. Thank you. Yes, I'm very supportive of what's suggested here in terms of planning. As to how it'll work, I have some experience on it. It's not the place to discuss it at this committee, though.
Hi, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, just a couple of questions for Richard, really. You mentioned that there'll be reflective strips on the barriers. Can we be assured that they're not going to be painted some garish colour as well?
Yeah, I can certainly mention that with the applicants, that it's, I mean, red and white would be the usual, and I would imagine.
It's just I'm thinking, you know, a 3 metre high stick waving in the air with the background that it's got.
Yes. Yeah,
red and white.
Yeah, yeah.
The other question was, if a car, and people will come in, even though there's big signs all over the place saying it's prepaid, if they come up to the barrier and there's another one behind them, is it going to be possible for them to turn in the bus turning area?
I would imagine it would be, yes. There's 21 metres between the barrier and the highway, so which is plenty enough for 2, possibly even 3 cars to line up, line abreast.
Okie doke, thank you very much.
Iawn, diolch Phil. Ifor?
Right, thank you, Phil. Ivor? Question for Richard. What is the capacity of the car park?
Oh, capacity of the car park, I think, is around about 70. It depends how neatly cars park. I know there is white lines and so forth, but there is some areas that they can park without going within the white lines. But I think it's somewhere between 70 and 80, something like that.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, happy to see.
Yes,
Well,
right. I'm happy to see this modernised. I second the proposal, unless somebody has already done so. Thank you. Mike?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I took one of the questions I was asking about the capacity of the car park, because I think we all recognise this is going to be a new approach, which I think is long overdue. I do have a concern about, it's okay saying we've got signs saying it's pre-booked at different places, but people just don't read signs. And I'm concerned about what's going to happen when you get congestion at the car park barrier by people who haven't parked and people who are trying to park and things. I think all we can do is sort of suck it and see how this works this year and learn from it. But yeah, very supportive of the idea. I think it's a great initiative.
Iawn, diolch yn iawn, Mike.
Right, thank you, Mike. I don't see anybody else indicating they wish to speak. We'll take it to the vote. Those in favour, please indicate with the green marker. If not in agreement, the red marker. That has carried. Everybody seems in favour. Moving on to the next. Castell Mawr Llanegrin. Can you put me in the other room, Mr. Chairman? Right, Rob will do that now. Anwen is in the waiting room. May I remind everyone to remove the green marker, please? On to the next application. Just share screen. This application is involved with a revised plan for a chicken shed. Most of the members will remember the original application approved in 2019. The site is by now operational. It's important to remain that the principle of the development has already been established. So the assessment of this application pertains to changes from the original plan. I'll go through the changes. This is the original plan. The lower one is the differences. I've highlighted the differences. There's no change in size or location of the building, but I'll go through changes to the building. The location, the position and design of fans and vents has changed, although it is different to what was originally approved. It is believed that this does not have any further harmful visual effect on the landscape. Environmental health have not raised any concerns, but they have asked for further confirmation through a technical statement, and that is reflected in the conditions. We'll get to that in a moment. And there is provision for an addition at the back of the building to remove manure. That would need to be done weekly. That's at the back of the building and not obvious in the view other than right next to the development. At the top on the right, there are amendments to doors and windows on the western gable. This is to allow daylight to this end of the building, but again, it'll have very little visual effect outside the site itself. And the pop holes on the side, most of those have been removed along the front and some along the back. Again, that's a very, very small effect, particularly from a distance compared to the original plan. Now, the greatest change and the most prominent in the landscape is to relocate the feed bins on the front or northern elevation, and also an increase in height. It's 45 centimeters higher, original plan shows them at the back and close to a corner, but the agent says it has been confirmed that relocating the bins is a requirement for the operation of the system. Because the feed would need to be inside. It's not possible to put this at the back because access is needed for lorries to refill it. It would be difficult to get them around the back. Having weighed up this, they are more prominent in the landscape. But in terms of the scale of the development itself, and the fact that you can see the back of the, from what you can see of the back of the building, this is acceptable, providing a landscape scheme is implemented to try to screen these a bit more. If we look at the site plan itself, there are some amendments in terms of location of the track and the hard standing around the building. The track itself, the applicant has used a current field track into the site rather than create a new track. That has led to widening the current track and a wider hard standing for turning on the northern elevation. The amendments only involve the access track, and there's nothing to do here affecting the access off the road itself. The revised plan does consider, well, this is considered to be acceptable in the change to the track, provided the landscaping is implemented. As to the hard standing, these are to perform operations such as a greater parking area and removal of manure. Again, there is a visual effect, but it's very small in context, and it's not very prominent outside the site itself. And again, with a landscaping scheme, these changes could be achieved. As you can see, the landscaping scheme circled in red. There's no change to that measured from the road, and that remains as previously permitted. There's been no objection from Natural Resources Wales on the new landscaping scheme. I don't know if it's very clear in the pictures, but one of the greatest concerns from neighbours in particular was the fact that no planting had happened since the buildings were erected, since the building was erected. But I have received confirmation that the applicant has been planting over the last few weeks. You can see some of the planting in one of the photographs. I understand that there will be protection provided for those trees on site quite soon now to prevent damage to them. So although there are a number of revisions, bearing in mind the site, the size of the original development, the members feel that this is not too prominent in the landscape compared to what has originally been approved. That is, of course, subject to a landscaping scheme carried out as soon as possible, and officers will be monitoring the situation to make sure that is done.
Ar amser yma, yr argymelliad ydy
At this point, the recommendation is to request delegated approval on condition that we get updated management plans. There are a number of management plans that need to be changed in order to reflect the changes and also appertaining to environmental health comments. In one of the original conditions, there was also a requirement to update the management plans annually, and we have not received that yet. It's important we get it before the application is finally approved. Yes, right, thank you. John Pugh first. Yes, thank you very much, Iona, for that. Yes, I agree with the recommendation. Is it proposed? Proposed. Ivar?
Yeah. I
have no problem with this at all. I'd like to see a bit more tree planting around it so it fits into the background. And looking at these new silos, they're less than half a metre above the ridge line of the shed, and the land rises behind it. So I'm happy to second the proposal. Brian?
Thank you, Chairman. I've got a number of questions in regarding the application that we have before us. One of these really was why some of these changes could not have been anticipated, bearing in mind the difficulty that we had and the debate and the amount of effort that went into the first application. How come some of these fairly fundamental changes in relation to the track, the bins, and the ventilation were not clarified by the applicant at that stage, rather than coming for a retrospective application? So that gives me one layer of concern. My second question is technical, and one of the key issues that we had in our original debates was to do with the impact on the wider environment in relation to the plumes of pollutants that would arise from the ventilation system, as well as particulate matter and odours from the management of the manure and ventilation, particularly in relation to the property that is very close. Do we have any information that reassures the authority that the impact of the changes to the ventilation, which includes the changes to the pop holes, not just the installation of different fans, what the impact of that is on those two elements? And part of that is also the impact on noise, bearing in mind that we've got a different ventilation system. Have we had any further reassurance in relation to noise? Again, bearing in mind proximity of neighbouring properties. So those are my points.
Yeah, just to ymateb.
Just to respond, that is the purpose of asking for an update on the management plan. Certainly, noise, smell and dust, we will need to update for those just to confirm any effect, and we will need to consult again with environmental health on those. We have asked, there is a condition of the original approval asking for an annual update. We have asked for the update, and we understand that the agent has started on work in updating that. And if the application succeeds, then we will expect to get that before giving any permission.
Just to clarify, if I may, Chair, whether that we're talking about an update on the management plans that were approved for the previous ventilation system, or are we having further evidence in relation to the changes that have been put in place and what the impact of that is, both on the SSSI, Castlemauer, and not Castle, and also the impact on local residents from noise and pollutants, because there was a lot of technical information in the original application that was based on the systems that were put in the original application, not those that we're now talking about.
We
will be expecting information about the new systems, not the original ones. If they've changed the systems, they will, of course, provide technical information on the new systems. Okay, thank you very much. Edgar? I'm supportive of this application, but I do think we need to keep an eye to make sure that the trees that are supposed to be planted are going to be planted, and that we get an update on this later on. That's all, really. I can't see any other hands up. Felly we'll put it to the vote. Everybody in favour of permitting? Green, against, red, cross. It's not permission, is it delegated authority to the officers? So the proposal is the recommendation, which is to delegate the authority. So that's what you're voting on. And as far as I can see, 10 in favour, 3 against. 10 in favour, 3 against. Motion carried. On to the next one. Item 5.1.
Chairman,
we do have a hand up at the moment.
Before we move on, just a footnote to the minutes. I've just had an email come through from County Highways, Conwy Highways, regarding the dwelling in Penmachno, and they have now removed their objection to the visibility displays. It came in just too late for the going through the minutes. So if that can be minuted, please, and when the Conwy Highways have removed their objection, and we can move on with approving the dwelling.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Richard. We need Anwen back in the room. Mr. Chairman, can I apologise that I was late? I had technical issues. I didn't vote on this matter, by the way, just to confirm. Anwen is now back in the room. Right, on to the next item, which is the recent Welsh Government consultation. Jonathan, yes, I'm taking this one. Elliw has prepared the paper, but she's not here today, so I'll present it. I am aware that Geraint is also here from the policy section, so I'm sure that Geraint can elaborate if there are any questions. The purpose of the paper is there four very important consultations at the moment. One has closed, 3 are still open as far as the consultation period is concerned. Just to give you a summary, the full responses are not here. The officers have been busy preparing full responses, so this paper just summarizes our direction as officers in relation to the 4 consultation. The first one there inquiry into second homes by the local government and housing committee, Senedd Cymru. We've put forward some comments on that, which recognise the situation, the actual emergency position that we're in at the moment. If you remember, the planning committee itself wrote to the minister last year, raising concerns and emphasising the dire straits we're in with houses, and hopefully the comments reflect that, and we welcome the opportunity to put forward our comments. The second consultation paper is legislation and planning policy for second homes and short-term holiday accommodation. This will be previous to any legislative changes to the planning system. You'll be aware of how the government is proposing to change it so that there is a new use class which recognises holiday homes as a separate class use to the ordinary houses. At the moment, you don't need planning permission to change one to the other. This will bring forward the potential, and it like I said, the potential for people to have to ask to change from a house to a second home or holiday home and back again. We think that this takes control over the situation, which feels a bit out of control at the moment. And as you can see, the content is something that we are keeping an eye on. The third one is a little bit wider and more extensive. It's on the permitted development rights amendments. As you can see from the comments there, we're supportive of some aspects that they're proposing and raising concerns about one or two aspects. I'm happy to go into that if you actually want to discuss them. The fourth paper is not in direct relation to planning, but it indirectly affects us with planning, which is the Welsh language communities. I know there is a lot of interest in this housing scheme, and there are several community organisations responding to this, and you can see our comments there. There are pretty innovative proposals being made by the government, and it's interesting to see the responses. I'm not sure about how practical some of them are, but at least it's good to see that these myths are being considered. And it just gives you a taster of the way in which officers are going, which direction they're going on these consultations, and hopefully the responses that we've put forward reflect what you yourselves as committee members have raised over the past year or years and months, really. So I just want the recommendation there is to identify the content. Like I said, this is a summary. The full responses are not in front of you today. Okay, thank you, Jonathan. I have one or two things that I'd like to raise. They'll be legislating from new. The current plan that we have in the park continues for another 4 years. Would it be possible for us to send a message to the government so that we can change it straight away rather than having to wait 4 years before we implement this? Also, the percentage of the second homes and holiday homes, is it 5%, 10%? What is it? In relation to the first point, in relation to the plan that you referred to, I tend to agree with what you said. There are several communities who tell us, and we agree, that this is a dire situation. If we say that we are going to wait until the new LDP is adopted, that takes us through to 2027. if the government brings in a national policy on this, which is likely, and it's what they've suggested, we do feel that perhaps we could go against the actual plan itself, the current existing plan, if there is enough support via the national policy and evidence as well. That is obviously something that we could deal with every application on their merits. At the top of page 38, it explains how we would use it in that context. So hopefully there is a potential for us to take action sooner, but we would expect the government to come up with national policy before we could actually start taking action against the LDP, in contrary, that is. And the second thing is we have to create policy on how we would implement this and at which point we would permit or grant when we change from one use class to another, and that's something for us to discuss as a committee. I have no idea really what the slant would be. We would accept people from changing from a house to a holiday home if the number of holiday homes would be a small percentage. Would it be a threshold of 10%, 15, 20? This is something that we would have to present a paper to you on in the future, and you would of course have to agree as a planning committee what the appropriate threshold would be. The threshold would possibly be different from one community to another. We're working very closely with Gwynedd on this. The Welsh Government officer said that this would only affect new applications. It won't affect the ones that already exist whatsoever. Owain? Thank you, Chairman. In general, I'm supportive to the responses that the officers have prepared. I do have one or two comments specifically. On the second paper, in the summary, there's reference if the authority does adopt Directive Article 4, there are planning obligations being raised there. And I just feel that we need to be clear, not necessarily in relation to this response, but as an authority, that we are ready to take on that burden. That's on top of the fact that we have a lack of staff in compliance already. So we need more guidance in the future on what the implications are. So in relation to paper number 3, the third paragraph there's a comment in relation to permitting use for 56 days temporarily, and that the national park should not be included with the 56-day entitlement permanently because it's a sensitive area for tourism pressure. I think we've recognized that the tourism levels vary across the park, and perhaps we should be adopting a policy that's a bit, well, where there's a bit more meat on the bones, where there is more pressure, because it may be relevant, say, to the discussion that we'll have in the working group later on camper vans. There may be some areas where that may be one way to overcome any concerns in relation to creating permanent holiday parks. In the next paragraph after that, there's reference to the need for more research into the viability of our towns. This is something that I've flagged before in relation to the COVID pandemic threat, looking at towns and how quiet it still is. And I'd like to see a bit more detail there in relation to when that research is, because it is a priority. It's priority for us as it is for many other areas as well. The one I'm most interested in is the fourth one, which is the Welsh Communities Housing Scheme. Jonathan made the comment that perhaps it doesn't relate directly to the planning system. I would argue that it does. A lot of the content relates to ideas relating to housing. It also brings forward some innovative things, especially with linguistic planning. If you look at the paper itself, there is reference to the need to strengthen linguistic plans on a local level, and it's something that I've been arguing for years, and I think we should do that. But there is bridging there as well to the land use planning as well. And if you think about it, I think there is room for us to make comments regarding how we can align the land use planning system to the one that's being initiated here. If we were to refer specifically that we actually call upon Welsh Government to review TAN 20, there is a real need to review that. And there are 4 arguments for doing that if we need evidence. One, planning authorities would get direction with regard to what the contribution would be from every authority area to the million Welsh speakers. That would initiate them to consider in their local development plans where the relation is between land use planning and the million Welsh speakers. As far as preparing local plans is concerned, we need clearer guidance on Welsh sustainability. At the moment, the sustainability assessment is very vague in relation to the Welsh language. We need clearer guidance on that. Thirdly, the paper itself, for the first time, as far as I know, does discuss the sensitive areas and areas of importance, and there's reference to this in TAN 20, but there's no definition of that, and it does ask local authorities to define what sensitivity is and importance. But where the government is concerned, where the government wants every area to see, well, they want to see the Welsh language doing well. Well, lastly, and it's something that's very close to my heart, and it's close to Jonathan's heart as well. He was a part of the gang of people who looked at the methodology of undertaking linguistic assessments, but it's never been recognized. The government, that is, has never recognized that methodology, and this may well be an opportunity for them to put hand on heart and say this is what we believe is an assessment of importance and sensitivity, and there's methodology to actually support that. Can I just ask Jonathan, are these responses on behalf of the authority, or is it on behalf of the national parks jointly? I think it's important that this goes in the authority's name. Thank you. Jonathan, did you want to come back on that? Thank you, Chair Owen. I won't respond to those all in detail. We have emphasized the importance of the financial implications of the planning amendment on that first consultation paper raises, and also the importance that this needs to be implemented through the taxing system and license system and the planning system. They won't work individually, and we need the resources to support that. So hopefully that's something pretty clear in our response. Quickly, on the third paper in relation to the point that difference between 28 and 58 6 days. I don't think they can vary that between different areas. I think the legislation is pretty consistent. It will be one or the other within the authority.
At a point in that, Jonathan.
On that point, Jonathan, could we give Article 4 directive to them to differentiate between the areas? That could be possible. Yes. The resource issue is the biggest thing there, really, as regards to compliance and enforcement. As you know, enforcement is already under pressure. We've seen increasing to 56 days. It would increase the pressure, and we don't have the resources to manage this. But it would be possible. The Article 4 element. And with the last point, I agree with 100%. We need to strengthen those linguistic plans, and hopefully the response reflects that. It'll be led by the park. We've told the other two parks that they can do it jointly with us, but we're leading on this. Okay, thank you. Edgar? Yes, I think it's important. We can't discuss this enough, really. We really need to get it right this time around with planning and second home, holiday homes, etc. Gwynedd Council increased the tax 100%. I happened to be a chair on the council at the time, and I had hundreds of people on the phone, emails, etc., and even letters to say that Gwynedd Council was racist and that we're against English people, etc. But the English have beaten us to it because they've closed the loophole. I don't know if you've seen that. Not entirely. It's in Manchester, isn't it? It's not total. It's not throughout the whole of England. So they have to close there, and they have to send in VAT receipts, etc. That is evidence about who's been staying there, because the councils don't have the resources to check if people are staying in these holiday homes. I didn't read all of the documents. I only read the headings. So I think we should also look at that to see if there's something that we can learn from that and in the context of our area. Judith? Thank you very much for the detailed comment. A general comment. I just wanted to reiterate how important it is that people take part in this consultation, because it's an extremely important opportunity to share comments, and on the back of that, it's totally in line with the well-being Act as well. One weakness is if we see that there's one area under pressure, we legislate no further development here. What's going to happen then is it going to move elsewhere, because it's happening in Abersoch now. There are no new houses in Abersoch, but they're moving to Nevin now. So we really have to be careful there as well. Yes, the same things happening here. Aberdyfi is expensive enough, but now they're starting it in Tywyn and even Corris, where people are buying houses. I agree 100% with number 39 in relation to the car parks. I think the park should be the same as everybody else in Wales. Some people want to make a living in the park as well as outside the park. So I think it should be 56 days. Mike?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, where do you start with this? First of all, it's well overdue. What concerns me is often we are constrained in the Snowdonia National Park and in Gwynedd by policies that we set up where they can't be reviewed for years. I mean, the reporters mention here on page 38 that to wait 4 or 5 years to review this is patently bonkers. We've all seen how the world has changed considerably over the past 2 years and what it's done to the housing stock in the whole of Gwynedd. As John Pugh just mentioned, we in Tywyn now have the problem of second homes where local people just struggle and cannot find places, never mind buy, can't find places to rent. I was at a meeting way back in November, the Community Scrutiny Committee, and we had a report on housing stock under the Joint Local Development Plan with Anglesey, and it has consistently fallen below the target set. We are nearly 50% down on housing stock, and there does seem to be too many constraints on stopping development and house building for local people, not just in Gwynedd, but I dare say in a national park, and I dare say we now have to change our thinking completely. It always seems to be negative, negative, stop, 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 no, 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 and we look for reasons not to allow house building for local people. I think we need to change that now, and we can't keep waiting 2, 3, 4, 5 years until a plan comes up for review. We have to be reviewing them now. No business would operate like this, reviewing things every 4 or 5 years. We do it every 6 months. And I think we need to change our mental thinking on this in order to safeguard our communities and to safeguard the Welsh language communities. Otherwise, we're going to be in a pickle 3 or 4 years from now, as bad as this.
Iawn, diolch yn fawr iawn, Mike.
Okay, thanks, Mike. We also have to remember when the government say that they want 1 million Welsh speakers, is it going to reach 1 million? There's no mention of creating employment here, so to keep people home to speak the language. It's a pie in the sky, but that's my opinion. It's a personal opinion. Anybody else want to make any comments? If not, is anybody willing to propose that we accept this report?
Sarah?
Sarah
Cynnig rhywun eilio?
proposes. Anybody seconding? Brian? Can we have a show of hands, please? Everybody in agreement? Green, red, against.
Cario yn ydi. Diolch yn fawr iawn.
Okay, motion carried.
Reit, awn ni mlaen i'r nesa.
On to the next one. List of compliance cases.
Go through them.
Mr. Chairman, can I? Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can I? Sorry, the translation isn't.
Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3.
Apologies. I'd like to just raise, I think, an issue that was raised at the last committee, which I wasn't in attendance. I'm aware that there was a few concerns raised about the compliance list and the updates provided. Just to advise members that we've worked very hard, in particular David has worked very hard to update this time round. Obviously, there sort of hasn't been a lot of time since that committee and this committee, but we've tried to review it as best we can and provide updates to most of the cases that are on there. Where there hasn't been updates, we've stated that there hasn't been any updates in respect to that. As you can appreciate, obviously the compliance section, and Jonathan's intimated earlier previously that we have got limited resources. Hopefully during this year, that will only improve with Alice returning and also myself reverting back to the compliance section at the end of my secondment. Just to provide, sorry if there's an echo, just to provide an insight, we are going to be looking at reviewing the whole compliance list and how we report that to the Planning and Access Committee. But obviously it's a sort of work in progress and something that we can only do as we get more resources in the compliance section. I hope that members will note that there has been a change around in the list this time round. And I'd just like to thank David for all his hard work in relation to providing that update and progressing it so quickly during the time that we've had. Obviously, he's learning the process, and it's a learning curve for him. And yeah, so I'd just like to thank him for that. Thank you.
Iawn, diolch Jane.
Right, thank you, Jane. We'll go through the documents quickly. First is page 43. Does anybody wish to raise anything? No, 44.
Richard, can I just check? Can you hear the
45.
translator? Can you hear Arthur? You can. Thank you.
46. 47. 48. Mr. Chairman, may I return to page 44? It says there that response is expected early in January. Now, is there an update on this? Are they proceeding with this? Which one is that, Tim?
Apologies, which number is that on page 4?
We are in dialogue at the moment because this is a very old application. We're trying to find out what the original problem was and what has been submitted and what they would need to apply for. So the dialogue is happening and we are in contact with them about this. Thank you. John? Number 48, if I may, 16 and 17 there. The local member has asked this come to committee.
Yn Aberdyfi mae o.
This is in Aberdyfi. What did you want with this? There have been quite a few local problems and the local member is asking that it come to committee. Jonathan, do you want to respond? If you could write in with a specific reason, please. Right, 49, Edgar. Page 49. Yes, with the local member from Aberdyfi asking for this. That individual did attend and took part in the planning committee. Was that appropriate? No, that was a mistake, if I remember correctly. They should not have been allowed to speak. Yes, I just wanted to check it did not happen again. Right, thank you. On to page 49. 50. 51. 52. 53. John? Number 50. What's the number? 57. On page 53, number 37. 37 on page 53. This is land at Hengwrt, Llanelltid. Is there any update on that?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There isn't any update as such. On the update that we've got, obviously from NRW, is that the hearing again has been postponed now to June 2022. We're on the understanding that that the materials were going to be moved at the end of this month. I think I sort of went past last week and I don't see any movement at all in respect to the materials. Obviously, we'll wait to see what happens in respect to that. There is still a bit of time. So in that case, it's just a case of monitoring that side of things and liaising with NRW in relation to the action that they're already taking.
Thank you. On the same page, number 35, that's since December 2018. Number 35, is anything happening with that?
Yeah, I can respond to that. I did actually undertake a visit and with the owner summer of last year, and we have advised them that we will be looking at taking action. What we need to ascertain there is the land ownership issue side of the situation, and that's why that we are going to be looking at doing a requisition for information for that to ensure that the land ownership, that we've got that correct before sort of proceeding with taking formal action, but they are aware that we will be taking formal action.
Thank you, Jane. Page 54, 55, 56, 57.
Yes, Chair, please, on 57. We have item number 43 there, which has been on the book since 2017, and obviously there's a problem in locating the owner. I don't know the scale of the problem locally, but what are the compulsory powers do we have in relation to this if we can't identify the owner, or what other mechanisms are there for it? It may not be critical in this case, but as a point of principle, I was wondering how we manage to move some of these long-standing ones on if it's causing, problems to other members of the community, and where the responsibility for that lies.
Thank you. No, I appreciate entirely that this particular case is certainly one that's been long outstanding, and that without being able to contact the owner is causing obviously some big issues in taking it forward, and certainly that I will look to take sort of legal advice in respect to that. I don't know the specific answers in terms of proceeding to the compulsory side of things, purchase side of things. I would need to take legal advice on that, and I will look at doing that and providing a further update at the next committee.
Thank you.
Diolch, Jane. Alan,
Thank you, Jane. Page 58, 59, and 60. So that's completed. Section 106 agreements. That's for information. Any questions? If I may just raise one matter here. There is an agreement on one of these, but it's to do with the applicant's financial situation. Can you take a commuted sum on this? A commuted payment when they move to the house, and then another commuted sum 5 years later, because with a commuted sum of 60,000 and building the house, it's a big burden for somebody young. I'm just asking the question for a young person. It's a big burden. I think in the first place, if the applicant were to contact the case officer dealing with this, on the general point, we don't allow that. The main reason is from this list, there is problem with capacity for compliance, and if we were to allow commuted sums after people have taken up residence, maybe 5 years after residence, it would create complexity with people paying and impose an additional burden on the officers. I would support keeping the system of payments being made before it's used for residential purposes. It is possible to ask, but I don't think we should change the principle. Thank you. Wyn? Following a conversation with someone local recently who had been advised by an agent that, well, the impression was that if they gave the authority a gift, they could build what they like. I think there is a bit of work involved here in explaining what the commuted sum means. And it was disappointing to hear this kind of message being given by a professional agent. And would it be possible to provide more explanation to people of why we do this? Yes, Mr. Chairman, we could do something possibly. We have raised this a number of times. I've done interviews with Golwg magazine and the BBC on this matter in the past. Yes, we could do something further. I'm not sure what, but certainly we could consider it. Brian, are you wishing to speak? Or the hand is up.
Sorry, old hand.
I don't see anybody else wishing to contribute. So do you agree that we accept those? So, those in, sorry, Mr. Cadeirydd, hand up, Mr. Cadeirydd, wishing to speak.
Yeah.
The final application on 63, I know we've had an explanation. This has been withdrawn. I don't recall the reasons for those. Were they planning reasons regarding the conditions, or were they reasons other than planning? Well, if they're other than planning, we don't need to know, but maybe a bit of explanation would help.
Cais Abergwyn Gregin, yeah?
The Abergwyn Gregin application, page 63, we had a site visit. Is this page 63? Yes. Abergwyn Gregin.
Sorry, I can answer that, Chairman. It has been withdrawn. The site has been purchased by the Abergwyn Gregin regeneration body, and they have put an application in now to use that area of land as car parking for local residents rather than the dwellings. So it's moved on from the dwellings.
Right, thank you. Everybody agreed on the report? If so, please indicate with a green indicator. Right, thank you. That's accepted. On to page 65, outstanding applications. 13 weeks or more elapsed. Any questions on that? Page 66. Capel Bethlehem Bryn Creek. What's the update there, John? That's with the lawyers. Iona is the case officer. Do you have an update? Yes, we're just waiting. They have agreed with the 106. We're just waiting for details from land registry so we can pass it on to start the agreement. That's all we're waiting for now, I believe. Right, thank you. If you accept those, we'll go to the background papers for information. Any questions there? Page 70.
Fel arfer, da ni'n sgipio heibio hwn yn...
Usually we skip over this, but I think there is a need to update. It still refers to structure plans, and those are long gone. Okay, page 70, 71. This is for information. 74 applications that were refused. Any questions? No. 75, 76, 77, and that's it. An appeal decision in Dolgellau. Jonathan, do you wish to report on this? Yona is the case officer. It's there for information. I didn't intend going through the report unless you have some questions. Yes, all that's come out of this is that it has been allowed, and it covers the whole of Gwynedd, not just Meirionydd. Yes. Yeah, there was a requirement that it be limited to Meirionydd for residents, but that's been extended to the whole of Gwynedd. Edgar, I said at the time that there was no planning reason to refuse this to start off with. But I'm wondering, is there any cost to us on this appeal? No? I did impress on them the need to appeal against it, and it has now been changed to the whole of Gwynedd, which is fair enough because all the people of Gwynedd are taxpayers. Right? Thank you. So that's the end of the planning committee.